The moment my mother looked me dead in the eyes, pointed at the dinner table and said, "You don't help the family. You don't eat with the family," I knew something in our relationship had permanently cracked, because what she really meant was that I wasn't family anymore unless I was useful to her. And what followed after that sentence still makes my hands shake when I think about it. So tell me honestly, if you were in my place, would you have done what I did? Or would you have just swallowed the humiliation and stayed quiet? I'm asking because that night didn't just end with words. It ended with an attempt to strip me of my dignity, my security, and my place in the only home I had ever known. All because I finally said no. It didn't start like that, though. Not at all, because for most of my life, I was the good daughter, the one who kept her head down, did what was expected, and tried desperately to earn love by being helpful. I grew up in a house where family loyalty was everything, at least on the surface. But what that really translated to was obedience. My mom had this unspoken hierarchy in her head, and at the top was her, then my older brother, then extended family, and somewhere far below, almost like an afterthought, was me. My dad was physically present but emotionally checked out, the kind of man who believed staying silent was the same as staying neutral, even when silence clearly took a side. From as far back as I can remember, I was expected to help with everything: cooking, cleaning, babysitting cousins, running errands, while my brother was praised for the bare minimum. If he took out the trash once, he was a hero. If I cooked an entire meal, it was just expected. And if I ever complained, I was called selfish or ungrateful. As I got older, the expectations only grew heavier. When I started working part-time during college, my mom didn't see it as me trying to build a future. She saw it as a new income stream for the household. She'd casually ask me to contribute, which quickly turned into handing over most of my paycheck. At first, I didn't fight it. I told myself this was just what families did. They supported each other, and maybe one day it would be my turn to be supported too. But that day never came. Instead, every boundary I tried to set was treated like a personal betrayal. If I said I was tired after work, I was lazy. If I said I couldn't help because I had exams, I was dramatic. And through all of it, my brother somehow managed to skate by without lifting a finger, always defended by my mom with, "He's a boy, it's different," as if that explained everything. The real tension started when I got a full-time job after graduation. For the first time, I had a stable income and a glimpse of independence, and that scared my mom more than anything. Suddenly, her requests turned into demands. She wanted a fixed amount of money every month, wanted me to be available whenever she needed something, and wanted me home early every night, even though I was an adult. When I gently suggested that maybe I should save some money to move out eventually, she laughed in my face and said, "Why would you leave your family? That's such a selfish thing to even think about." Remember feeling this heavy knot in my chest, like my future was being quietly suffocated. But I still didn't push back too hard, because I was afraid of being labeled the bad one. Everything came to a head over something that sounds small but wasn't. My mom had agreed to host a big family dinner, one of those gatherings where everyone shows up, eats, criticizes each other, and leaves. She volunteered me without asking to cook most of the food, even though I had just finished a brutal week at work and had told her I was exhausted. When I finally said, calmly but firmly, that I couldn't do it this time and that she'd need to handle it or ask someone else, the look on her face changed instantly. It was like a switch flipped. She accused me of forgetting where I came from, of thinking I was better than everyone because I had a job, and of abandoning my responsibilities. My brother chimed in too, saying I was being dramatic and that it's not that hard to help, even though he wasn't planning to help at all. I felt cornered, but for the first time in my life, I didn't back down. I repeated that I couldn't do it, that I needed rest, and that my life didn't revolve around being their unpaid help anymore. That's when she said it. "You don't help the family. You don't eat with the family." She said it loud, in front of my dad and my brother, as if she was delivering some ancient law. Then she told me that if I wasn't going to contribute, I shouldn't expect to enjoy the benefits of living there. She made a show of it too, later that evening, setting the table for everyone except me. Plates, glasses, chairs, all laid out like I didn't exist. I stood there in the doorway, feeling like I was about 10 years old again. That same familiar mix of shame and anger bubbling up inside me. My dad didn't say a word. He didn't tell her to stop. He just ate. That hurt more than I can explain. I thought that was the worst of it, but I was wrong. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, my mom came into my room and told me we needed to talk. That conversation quickly turned into her telling me that if I wasn't willing to follow her rules, maybe I shouldn't be living under her roof at all. She said it casually, like she was discussing the weather, but I could hear the threat underneath. She even suggested that maybe it was time for me to move out, knowing full well that she had made it nearly impossible for me to save enough money to do that comfortably. It felt like a trap, like she wanted me scared and desperate so I'd fall back into line. I went to bed that night with my heart racing, staring at the ceiling, realizing for the first time that the place I called home wasn't actually safe for me emotionally or financially. Over the next few weeks, things got colder. She stopped talking to me unless it was to criticize or demand something. Food started disappearing from the fridge, and when I asked about it, she'd say it was for the family, emphasizing that word like a weapon. I started buying my own groceries and keeping them in my room, which only made her angrier. She accused me of being secretive, of hoarding, of disrespecting her authority. My brother mocked me for it, saying I was acting like a tenant instead of a daughter. And maybe that was true, because that's exactly how they were treating me. This is the point where I need you to understand how trapped I felt. Because from the outside, it might seem obvious to just leave, but it's not that simple when you've been conditioned your whole life to believe that leaving equals betrayal. I was juggling work stress, family pressure, and this constant guilt that gnawed at me even when I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I started quietly planning an exit, saving whatever little money I could, researching apartments late at night, and leaning on a few close friends for emotional support. I didn't tell my family any of this because I knew they'd either sabotage it or guilt me into abandoning the plan altogether. Now, before I tell you what finally happened, the moment everything exploded, I want you to pause for a second and put yourself in my shoes. Your own mother tells you that your worth in the family is conditional, that you only deserve to eat, to belong, if you serve. You're financially controlled, emotionally dismissed, and constantly reminded that you're replaceable. Would you keep trying to fix it, or would you start choosing yourself? Because that's the choice I was standing in front of. And either way, someone was going to be angry. The final confrontation happened on a random evening that I'll never forget. I came home from work to find my mom and brother sitting in the living room, waiting for me. That alone set off alarm bells in my head. My mom told me to sit down and then she laid it all out. She said they had decided that if I was going to continue living there, I needed to start giving more money, more time, and more respect, which in her language meant obedience. When I said I couldn't afford to give more, and that I already felt stretched thin, she snapped. She accused me of lying, of hiding money, and then she said something that crossed a line I didn't even know existed. She said that if I didn't agree, they would start charging me for everything: food, utilities, even emotional stress, her exact words, until I either complied or left. It was financial blackmail, plain and simple. Something in me finally broke, but not in the way they expected. I didn't cry or beg. I felt this strange calm wash over me, like all the fear I'd been carrying had burned itself out. I told her very quietly that if my place in the family came with conditions and threats, then maybe it wasn't a family I wanted to be part of anymore. My brother laughed and said, "Good luck surviving on your own." My dad once again said nothing. That was the moment I knew there was nothing left to save. Within a week I moved out. It wasn't glamorous. I rented a small room in a shared apartment, slept on a mattress on the floor, and ate instant noodles more times than I cared to admit. But every single night I felt lighter. When my mom realized I was actually gone, not just bluffing, she exploded. She sent me long messages about how ungrateful I was, how I had abandoned the family, how everyone was talking about me. She even tried to spin the story to relatives, saying I left because I was too proud to help. I didn't respond. For the first time, I chose silence for myself, not as submission, but as protection. The aftermath wasn't easy. There were days I cried from exhaustion and loneliness. There were moments I questioned myself, wondering if I really was selfish, if I should have just endured it a little longer. But then I'd remember that dinner table, the empty chair, the way my own mother used food as a weapon, and the doubt would fade. Slowly, I started rebuilding my life on my own terms. I learned how to budget properly, how to say no without apologizing, and how to recognize love that isn't transactional. Some family members eventually reached out, quietly admitting they'd seen the favoritism and control, but hadn't known how bad it was. Others still don't speak to me, and honestly, that's okay. Now, when I think back to her words, "You don't help the family," You don't eat with the family. I realize how twisted that mindset was. Family shouldn't be a job you can be fired from. Love shouldn't come with a price tag. And respect shouldn't mean erasing yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Walking away was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was also the most freeing. So that's my story. And I want to know what you think. Was I wrong for leaving and choosing myself? Or would you have done the same thing in my place? Like this video if you were on my side. Subscribe for more stories like this if you want to hear more real experiences that don't get sugar-coated. And share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I read them, I really do. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.